Show at 6 o'clock this Tuesday evening, March 18th, and time that the City Council set aside for a regular City Council meeting. So we'll bring that into order, and we kick off every City Council meeting with an invocation followed by a pledge. And here tonight to give us an invocation is Pastor Tim Geis with Bible Baptist Church. So if we can have the pastor give the invocation and followed by the pledge.
Join me if you please. Heavenly Father, in your word you moved by your Spirit the prophet Isaiah to write these words. But now, O Lord, thou art our Father. We are the clay, and thou art potter, and we all are the work of thy hand. Heavenly Father, my prayer tonight is that these public servants would be willing to be clay in your hands as the potter, willing to be shaped and molded and guided by your wisdom, which we ask for on their behalf. Lord, I ask for your protection for them and their families, as well as that your protection would be afforded our other public servants here in the city of Oak Harbor, those out in the streets keeping us safe, as well as protection for those in uniform in the armed forces, protecting our country home and abroad. So guide this meeting tonight by thy holy wisdom, we pray, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Tim Geist. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome. This evening, first up on our agenda is a presentation by Mike Stamper. He's the Executive Director or Community Chapter Executive for the American Red Cross, and the American Red Cross has reached out to us to give us an update. So, Mr. Stamper, welcome.
Very cool. It's Red Cross Month. So every year, March is Red Cross Month, nationally declared, and so it's kind of exciting to be able to get out and talk to city councils and other levels of government about what we do. Oak Harbor is kind of near and dear to our heart because a big part of the Red Cross is service to armed forces. We've done that from the very beginning with service to military people during the Civil War. It's something that is ingrained in the Red Cross and something that we care very deeply about and are very passionate about. The other flip side of us is what everybody knows about, and that's our work in disaster services, working major disasters both nationally and internationally and locally. A lot of people don't know that the Red Cross works at a very micro level, frequently helping people who are burned out of their houses by a fire or have a flood happen or a broken pipe or something like that that creates an immediate need that they need bridged back to normalcy from. In those situations, we provide food, clothing, shelter, and often help in mental health and nursing aid to those people. Often they're in their life. We have some of the best volunteers in the country right here in our chapter. Our chapter includes all the San Juan Islands, the Fidalgo area, and all of Whidbey Islands. So we're a little geographically challenged, but we have some of the greatest volunteers in the country. And our volunteers are well known for deploying all across the country and working very diligently in this chapter. The chapter has 140 volunteers and one paid person, that's me. So we are pretty good stewards of the donor dollar in this particular chapter. A little bit about me. I became the director of the Islands chapter in October, so I'm a newbie, huge learning curve. And I'm also the fire chief on Guaymas Island. I've been a firefighter EMT for 21 years, and a fire chief for 6. So I kind of have both sides. I have the Red Cross side now, and I've worked with the Red Cross for years as a firefighter, and that connection is very strong. been able to have a chance to work with Ray several times. You guys are very fortunate to have an incredible fire chief and an incredible response system in this city. So kudos to them. We want to work very closely with your emergency response people, with your Department of Emergency Management, and be prepared for whatever comes our way. So couple things, couple plugs. We have Safe in the Sound, which is a program we do with Puget Sound Energy. We do presentations to local groups. If you have a local group you'd like to have a presentation about being prepared for the worst case scenario, we'd be happy to come out and give those presentations. They're free. We also we also have the Ready Rating system, which is part of that whole thing, to help businesses become prepared for disaster and become ready rated. So one final thing, our big annual fundraising event is the Real Heroes. We're starting to collect nominations now for Real Heroes. The event will be on May 2nd at the Port of Anacortes Transit Shed, which is all the way at the north end of Commercial Avenue. You're all invited. It's a great event. We provide dinner, and we honor some very special people who are heroes in all of our communities throughout the chapter. So please save the date, May 2nd. If you want to nominate a real hero, just go to our website, which is www.redcross.org/Islands Chapter. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor Dudley, for the time. I appreciate it. And City Council, I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the time, and here's to hopefully never having to call upon you, but let me thank you for being there when we have to. So we live in a safe community, and you make it safer, so thank you. Next up is our approval of the agenda. I know staff is wishing to add a couple things. You've received a copy of a request to an excused absence for Councilmember Omberg. If we can throw that onto the consent agenda as item H, as well as under the executive session, we're discussing pending litigation and potential litigation. We're wishing to add the topic of property acquisition as well to be discussed in executive session. And if you're wishing to amend the agenda with those amendments, we would like that.
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion to amend tonight's agenda with those amendments. And a Campbell, any additional, any questions, any discussion in reference to that amendment? All those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Any other changes? Okay. A motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion to approve the amended agenda by Councilmember Severance,
Second.
second by Councilmember Munns. All those in favor of the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. And first up on our agenda is citizens' comment period. We had a sign-in sheet, but no one signed in, but you do have an opportunity at this time to address the city council. Anyone wishing to address the city council on matters within the jurisdiction of the city and are not on the agenda may do so now. Any agenda items will take public comment at that time. If you wish to comment on the consent agenda items, you can do so now. Any matters not appearing on tonight's agenda will not receive action tonight, but could be referred to staff for a future meeting. We're going to ask that you step forward, speak into the microphone, state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to address the city council can do so at this time. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. What is council wishing to do with those consent agenda items, A through H? Councilmember Servatius.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented and amended.
Second.
We got a motion from Councilmember Servatius, second by Councilmember Campbell. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of that consent agenda item Items signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. And those consent agenda items have been approved. Next up, staff, mayor, and council comments, starting off with city administrator, Dr. Court.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. I'll quickly follow on the rule amendment that you just approved to add a procedure for excused absences. If you prefer a hard copy of the council rules, we've had a number of changes recently. We're going to make a new version of this document. I know some of you prefer to have this electronically, but if I could see a show of hands of those who would like a paper copy, we'll go ahead and get those out to you. Okay. All right. So I think I saw six hands go up. So all right. Thank you very much. Some very good news that we did in a conversation with a woman that we've selected as our appointment to HR director, accepted that job today. It's not in writing yet, so I can't release her name yet because we need that written. But we had a great phone conversation, and she is queued up to start on April 8th. So we're really excited about getting somebody of her quality. She comes to us with a lot of public experience, not in cities, but a lot of public experience and a lot of labor negotiation experience. So I think we have somebody great to fill that very needed hole in our staffing. A number of you, I know the council and I know the mayor and several staff members are going to. I know that both Nikki and I are going to the Anacortes on Friday afternoon for a training session on risk management for public officials. And if any of you are interested in either using a city vehicle or carpooling over, please let me know. We can try and coordinate that. Since there are so many of us going, so I think we're going to be well represented over at City Hall in Anacortes. And I couldn't help. I looked ahead to see what I might mention off of the draft agenda for the next council meeting. And the only thing that struck my attention, and people will really want to turn out en masse for this, is we have the potential contract extension for Ronnie Production Services. So anybody who is interested in that particular topic may want to show up and express their opinion. So that concludes my comments.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Court. As far as mayor comments, nothing. Moving on to council members' comments. Mayor Pro Tem Pagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of items. On March 8th, Saturday, I attended a luncheon hosted by the Shakunage Japanese Women's Support Club. I represented Mayor Scott Dudley in the city in their luncheon, and they serve delicious Japanese food in bento boxes. Very delicious, and they share the Japanese culture through their traditional folk dances. And I would like to thank the president of that Japanese group, Ms. Sonoko Rhodes, for the invitation. The other one I attended also last Thursday, March 13, what they call Racial Challenge program at the North Whitby Middle School. Two other council members were there. Councilman Rick Alberg was there, and also Councilman Joel Servatius with his wife and children. Now, the Racial Challenge, it's a program about stopping bullying. And it is a very important program, especially in schools. Bullying, there's no place bullying in our schools, in our community, in our society. Rachel Joy Scott was the young girl who was the first murdered victim at Columbine High School in April 20, 1999. And Rachel's writings have inspired the nation with her writings on bullying. So the school children at the North Whitby Middle School has taken the challenge, what they call racial challenge. And I would like to thank Haley Abbott for inviting me to join the racial challenge on that day. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Patel. Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was behind Mayor Pro Tem. I was also at that meeting that evening. We didn't see each other. I was greatly impressed by the presentation and the ideas that were put forward that evening. I was terribly disappointed because the young lady who wrote me the letter inviting me to come was not there, so I couldn't thank her. But I talked to one of the teachers and asked them to go off and do it. That's all I have.
Councilmember Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to represent the city and the base in Washington, D.C. The mayor and I joined AWC with a conference room visit with Senator Cantwell and Senator Murray that I thought went really well, and we're so glad to hear that they don't think it's going to be brought up or get through Senate or the House as far as taxing municipal bonds. So that'll be great news for any of the cities in all our capital projects. So that was really good news. I kept them up to date on what we're doing here in the city and what we need, and especially our wastewater treatment plant. And when we went to the Pentagon, warm welcomes, saw some old friends, and they said if there is a BRAC, NAS would be his non-entity. They are solid, and they're just putting more and more money into the base for the expansion. So that's good news for our economy and our citizens, and we'll be welcoming more. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate representing the city on this and was very honored and humbled. So thank you. The mayor did a great job. Appreciate it very much. So thank you.
Councilmember Severance.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 weeks ago, at our last meeting, I had mentioned that the Island County Economic Development Council was meeting the following day, and they had their regular meeting. The one item that they are taking an ongoing look at is the fairgrounds plan approval. So they've got like an ad hoc committee working on that. If people have concerns about the fairgrounds, the Island County Economic Development Council is certainly trying to help solve the future for the fairgrounds. Yesterday, I participated in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, the first parade of spring. There were a few other council people there and the mayor. So again, to the Irish, congratulations for the first parade of spring, and it didn't rain, so it was very nice. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember Eisen.
Thank you, Mayor. No, it didn't rain, but it was certainly windy. I watched from the warmth of my home. Great job, guys. You all looked great. And I would also like to echo Councilmember Munn's comments about our visit to D.C. It was an honoring and humbling experience for sure. It's not often that the leadership at the Pentagon gets visits from people telling them how much they're doing right and how much they love the base being here. And so I think that they look forward to these visits almost as much as we do, because we don't show up with a list of complaints. And it's when we discuss with the leadership how the community and the base interact and how they are our community, they're not part of the community or an offshoot of it. What we heard over and over again that day was that if they could take what we have here as far as the sense of community and the base and the military support and replicate that at every naval installation, they would want to do that. So I think that as a community, Oak Harbor and Whidbey Island is setting a really fantastic example, and that has not gone unnoticed. It was really nice to hear. I also wanted to give a shout out to Joanne Hellman of ITAPIC. I asked the leadership that had been stationed on Whidbey, off the record, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we improve on? How was your experience as a sailor? And the response I got from two of them was that hands down, ITAPIC was the most effective presentation that they had received, and they've never seen it replicated anywhere else, and it really stuck with them, and that was the first thing they both mentioned. So I thought that Joanne would be very pleased to hear that. And that is all I have. Thanks.
Councilmember Servias.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Mr. Pagao mentioning Rachel's challenge, and I echo their sentiments as well. It was probably one of the most powerful presentations I have seen in a long time. She started off and she was telling the story of Rachel, but she talked about prejudice, and that prejudices comes from the roots of to prejudge and to judge people based with no opinion or fact. So it was a very powerful message, a great message for not only our youth, but for adults as well, to not prejudge, as well as all the other stuff that goes along with bullying. So I wish we could get a presentation like that more frequently, maybe on an annual basis, but I also applaud the Oak Harbor Educational Foundation for putting that together. On a happier note, Island County right now is accepting Health Hero nominations. And so I'll read this very briefly, but they are looking for nominations through April 11th. The formal title is actually the Linda Lee Martins Memorial Community Health Hero Award. There's 3 different categories for adults, youth, or agencies, and I understand the city, Dina Nichols said, I think we won this, or someone here won this a few years back. But I will leave this with Dina. If you know of anyone that might be a good applicant, nominees should, through voluntary service, have directly or indirectly impacted community health, but not necessarily limited to healthcare, environmental health, nutrition, safety, or quality of life. So I will leave this with Dina. Once again, there's 3 categories. They're accepting them through April 11th, or you can also contact Laura Luganville at the county. It is 679-7350. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next up, under ordinances and resolutions, we have ordinance 1689. And we'll bring up our finance director, Mr. Doug Merriman. And this is in reference to a motion to authorize change to the lodging tax advisory committee from 5 members to 7 members. Mr. Merriman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As stated, this agenda bill pertains to ordinance number 1689. The ordinance proposes to increase the membership on our Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, what we call our LTAC committee, from 5 to 7 members. Many years ago, we used to have 7 members on the committee. We, at that time, would run into difficulties in staffing that committee. There was a decision made to go ahead and move it to 5. But I think with the amount of activity we're having, and one issue we run into is not getting enough representation of all the different service clubs and different organizations that would be able to do some work with us on the committee, really requires us to have a couple of more positions. I've outlined what the legal requirements are for staffing that committee. Basically, you have 1 elected official from the city, and then the rest of the committee is split between those organizations that collect the lodging tax, which are basically hotels or motels, and the other half are members that receive funding from the lodging tax. So from our grant program or the Chamber of Commerce, different organizations such as those. So this ordinance does the code amendment to increase from 5 to 7 members, and our recommended action for tonight is to adopt ordinance number 1689.
This time I'll turn to the public. Anybody wishing to comment on this possible action can do so now. Seeing none, we'll bring back our finance director, turn to the city council, starting with Councilmember Eisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. Is it fully staffed at the moment with 5 members?
We've had 5. We did lose 1 member just shortly ago, and I think that position was just recently filled.
Okay.
So we would have to staff the additional 2 positions.
Off the top of your head, do you know who's on the committee and who they represent?
Right now, we have I don't remember all the names, everybody, but we have a member from the Coachman Inn, I believe, and from the one where Mitzel's used to be. And Best Western, thank you. We have a member from the North Whidbey Car Show and a member from the Chamber of Commerce. And then we have one of the council members is the chair of that committee.
Okay. Good. So yeah, we'd want to round that out with maybe some service organization members or, okay, yeah, perfect.
Councilmember Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. No questions.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Pagao.
You have no question, yeah? Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As chair of this committee, I back this 100%. Thank you.
Councilmember Munns.
No questions, sounds good.
Okay. Councilmember Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. No questions. I move to adopt ordinance number 1689.
Second.
We got a motion from Councilmember Servadius, second by Councilmember Eisen, to adopt ordinance 1689. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting ordinance 1689 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Merriman. Next up, under public hearings, public meetings, we have Resolution 1410, and we'll bring up our senior planner, Kaczmarek, for the 2014 Comprehensive Plan docket. Mr. Kaczmarek.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Kaczmarek Senior Planner. This agenda bill presents the 2014 Comprehensive Plan docket. The Comprehensive Plan amendment process starts way back in October, started in October. You gather ideas. The Planning Commission usually is the board that addresses those ideas or generates ideas themselves. They've been dealing with plan issues all year, and they are the ideal body to consider them. So they consider them in October and November, and we also have applications that go out to the general public for comprehensive plan amendments, usually related to land use changes. With development, some property owner may want to change their zoning and have a different development there, so that usually goes through the amendment process. This year, we do not have any applications from the public. So all of this information is then collected and compiled in December. The Planning Commission then holds a public hearing in January, given the chance for the public to view the document and comment on the preliminary docket. And the Planning Commission holds a public hearing in January. They held that this year, and then they forwarded the docket to the City Council, and our comp plan regulations state that the City Council should consider it before the end of March so that we can finalize this docket and then begin work for it. So what do we have on this year's docket? We have the 2016 Comprehensive Plan update. The work on this plan started about a year ago. This is a comprehensive update to our entire plan. There's a lot of elements that the state has required to be updated as part of this process. So this will be on the docket for another couple of years. We're going to be consistently working on this plan. We also have the capital improvements plan this year. This is another mandated item by the state. We'll consider it as part of our budget year this year, so we'll try and make sure that we link the budget with the capital improvements plan and the projects for the next 6 years. We also have the land use change, 1000 Southeast City Beach Street. This is actually a carryover from last year. We had this on the docket. It was just unclear on what land use designation we wanted to shoot for this project, for this site. It's currently zoned R4 multifamily, and the city owns the property, and you know that we're not going to build apartments there. So a different designation is appropriate for this land use. We have it as a placeholder here to determine what land uses, what land use category this should be changed to, and we'll probably try and consider that this year as well. We also have the study on scenic views. This is again a carryover from last year. This is a discretionary project that the Planning Commission chose to have on there and look at it. We've done a lot of work in terms of the analysis and some information gathering. We have to get to the policy and regulation part of it, and it's very resource dependent. So it's on the docket, and time permitted and resources permitted, we hope to get some work done on that aspect of it this year. We also have the future land use map, and this is regarding the UGA boundary correction. If you remember, back in 2005, the city adopted amended the UGA, sent it to the county. The county went through the discussion. There was several controversies related to that. Eventually, it was decided that only one portion of that UGA amendment that the city amended is going to be adopted as part of the UGA. So our map is inaccurate at this time. And it's very timely to amend this map because as we go into the 2016 comprehensive plan discussion, we are going to have some discussion on UGA amendment with population increase in 20 years. And so to have a correct map would be a great place to start that discussion. So we need to make those changes this year. So these are the 5 items that are on the docket for this year. We recommend that the City Council hold a public hearing on it. And take action. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kamak. At this time, we'll conduct that public hearing. Anyone wishing to comment on the comprehensive plan amendment docket for 2014 can do so now. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, turn to the City Council, starting with Councilmember Servedius.
No questions.
Councilman Munns.
No question, just a comment. Reasonable, not too overexpansive, and what we need at this time, so thank you.
Councilman Campbell.
No comment, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Pagano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kamak, this will be an update that will cover for the next 6 years. Is that right? From 2013 to 2019?
For the capital improvements plan?
Capital improvement plan.
Yes,
That's right.
6-year plan, that's correct.
Yes. Under the capital improvement plan, that's quite a broad subject that includes many elements like transportation, emergency services, parks, and different things. Well, the Planning Commission will be talking about a particular subject or element of the capital improvement plan?
I think you're talking about the elements of the comprehensive plan. The 6-year plan, and I may have misled that question.
Okay.
The capital improvements plan is for 6 years. The 2016 comprehensive plan update is probably a little longer time frame, but you're right, we have all the elements, the transportation element, the parks, and et cetera. We have identified a scope for the 2016 update, the required elements that need to be updated. And so the Planning Commission will be addressing those elements that need to be updated. If there are elements that don't need to be updated, I think for currently, unless there is a policy change or something to consider, those probably won't come up for discussion. So we're going to focus only on the ones that are mandated for the 2016 update and focus on those aspects of it.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Severance.
Thank you, Mayor. We had no private applications received, and I don't believe we had any received last year or even
No,
the
we
year
haven't.
before. It's been several years, hasn't it?
It's been at least a couple years.
Is that economic, probably the economy?
Could be looked at that, or our land use map is working great and
There you
everybody
go.
likes that.
Okay,
So,
I'll take the latter. Thanks, that's all I have.
Councilmember Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no questions, and I move to approve Resolution 1410.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilmember Heisen, second from Councilmember Severance to approve Resolution 14-10. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving Resolution number 14-10 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kamak. Next up, under new business, we'll turn to our police chief, Chief Ed Green, for the Police Community Advisory Board presentation. Chief Green.
Mayor, council, thank you. And we'll see if we can get this to close down. So when you hired me in 2012, one of the things I got really excited about was the fact that we actually had a community advisory board here. You know, most chiefs would probably look at that and say, oh no, I got the public involved and they're going to start dictating policy and everything else to me. I am a firm believer that the people cannot be policed unless they want to be policed, and this is the nexus to the public. So I want to thank you for that. And if you look through your municipal codes, under the ordinances, under Chapter 2, and specifically 250050, subsection 2, it talks about the fact that the Police Advisory Board is required to come to you once a year and speak to you and give you a presentation. So tonight, that's what we're here for. I'll try and make this fairly brief. I know we got a few things on the agenda here that may take a little bit longer, but I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce your Police Advisory Board, and I think everybody showed up from the looks of it. So thank you, all of you, for being here, and we'll start off with the chair, Ed Johnson, right? So Meg Massey is sitting to his right. Meg is the administrative assistant for the police department, who is also assigned to the advisory board to assist them on a day-to-day basis as they act as an independent body separate from us. I got Nora Daniels to the right there. I have Jeff Campbell to the right. You gentlemen, everybody can stand up here. You don't have to be shy. So, G. Barner's to the right there, up here. Terry Lacey. Lucas Yonkman. And of course, on front row, Robert Young. So I do have a vacant position in this, and actually 2 positions. I'll see if we can. I have a member position that's vacant, and I have a student liaison position that's vacant. Currently, my school resource officer, that's one of his tasks, is trying to locate a person to fill that position. So we're actively recruiting for that. If there is somebody who is actually interested within the viewing public here in this particular committee, I would encourage them to contact the mayor's office and come talk to us about this. So, as I said, the Community Advisory Board has got some duties. It's outlined in the municipal code. I know it's a little long, arduous, and it's not very good reading. It's kind of dry reading, and that font does probably hurt your eyes. But I wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of the fact that this actually exists and that you see this. A couple of things, though, that are inside that ordinance that we highlight, or I wanted to highlight, is the fact that the duties of the board are to enhance police-community relations. One of the other things is promote the public awareness of the city's police services and programs, and serve as the liaison between the police department and the community, and have no active involvement with the department personnel, policies, or issues. So, the values of the department, these are our values as written, is to involve the community in all policing activities which directly affect the quality of life, to preserve and to advance the principles of democracy, to maintain crime prevention as our primary goal, to manage all of our resources carefully and effectively, and to involve our employees in the matters that affect our job satisfaction and effectiveness, and to maintain the highest levels of integrity and professionalism in all aspects of our operations. Right off the get-go, you can see there in our values that we have posted in our building across the street, it talks about the fact that the community gets involved with us from the get-go. I mean, this is what we do. So our doors are open, and we want people coming in and talking to us. See if we can get this to work here. I want to talk about some of the things they've been doing for the past 12 months. When I got here, the board wasn't so much stagnant, they just weren't very active. The particular board I have now, there's been a few replacements, and I'm very proud of them, and they are quite active, and there's quite a few things they've been doing and getting out and getting involved in, as well as talking to quite a few different people. I have actually a survey I'll hand out here in just a moment, but I have a community survey that is online, that has been updated and continues to remain updated. And it is serving more than one purpose. We're finding out that we built the survey to try and help us, to try and get some feedback from the community. Most of you have probably seen it if you've been on the city's website. I'm getting that feedback that I need from my department, but I'm also finding out that I'm getting a lot of other feedback in regard to, you know, I've got a pothole here, we've got a stop sign down there. It's working a multitude of different ways, so it's enabling me to actually go to my colleagues and say, look, here you go, here's some information, or here's this, or here's that. We need this brush cut, we need this trim, you know, this tree trimmed. So it's working real well. We're constantly looking at it, and we'll be looking at it here in another month or two to try and tweak it, revamp it, and make sure we're getting the maximum amount of responses out of that we can. So we're always constantly want to stay on top of that. We redesigned our community handouts. Actually, I shouldn't say we, they did. So they're up to date, a little more modern, a little bit easier to read. They were quite busy before and didn't have all the information on that they should have had. active participants in the National Night Out program. I don't know if, I assume most of you were down there this last year and probably saw them. They were there very actively manning our booths and walking in the crowd and coming back with a lot of information and stuff and talking to us. They also participated in our graffiti removal program. We have a program that works with community service, and I have those officers going out on a regular basis as well as some of the volunteers. And Nora Daniels, who's one of the cab members here, is also one of my volunteers. And they go out, as well as Jeff joined them, and going out and removing graffiti through various different locations through the city. So, we get this to work yet? So the community survey, one of the things we did is we wanted to come up with a goal here when we did this, is redesign what we had, create something that's a little bit relevant to today's group, today's people. People are much more technologically advanced today than they were many, many years ago, including myself. We want to make it very simple. We want to make it easy. One of the surveys we had when I first took over was quite long, cumbersome, and I tried to take it, and I'll tell you what, after a couple minutes, it was kind of like, okay, this is enough. This is asking me to type way too much and do too much. So I also want to make it accessible, whether it be print, electronic, or however. So we did just that as well. So we wanted something to cross all spans. We wanted to be able to use it, use the information, and use the data that's collected. And we're already finding that happening. Like I said, this is something that's spanning all the departments. I thought it was just going to be used for myself, but I'm finding a lot of information and stuff we're having to hand off to Public Works and different folks. So out of the, just a random sampling, approximately 100 responses received with pertinent information concerning various city issues, including other departments such as Public Works. So that's just something we're getting back on a regular basis, different things. So the handout needed to be reworked to be a little bit more relevant. Again, emphasizing that partnership between the police department and the citizens of Oak Harbor. One of the things the Community Advisory Board has is a contact. They have an email. They also have a phone number that goes directly to them. Again, this is not something that is, information is shared with me at a meeting, but it is something that's facilitated through the administrative assistant and the chair of the board. So somebody can actually call in confidence to talk about a particular policy or this, that, and the other, and the Community Advisory Board can meet with that person, talk to them, or they're not going to make policy, but there'll definitely be that liaison or that connection if they need to between the department and us. So, which is their goal. That's kind of why they're there. So we wanted something that would have, identify where the monthly meetings are at, identify, the survey, identify the members and how to get hold of them and what their duties are. So we developed all that. As I said, they were involved in quite a few things. The National Night Out this last year, they spent quite a bit of time out there. In fact, I think most of them were there for most of the day, if I remember correctly, with me. So we had a really good time interacting with the public and doing different things, and they talked to quite a few different people, bringing back quite a bit of information. So the graffiti removal program, this is what I talked about here, that some of the members have found themselves getting actively involved in this. They're enjoying it, and you probably haven't seen too much of this happening in the past couple of months, and it's not because we're not anxious to do it. We have a list of places to go. It's just we've got to wait for the weather to cooperate with us. It doesn't work very well when we get out there and try and clean this stuff off with some of the bio-friendly stuff that we have, and it just gets washed off the walls before we can even get the stuff removed. So we've got to be patient, and as we have more sunshiny days, we'll get out there and start removing some more of this stuff. So over the course of the next 12 months, this group, like I said, is quite active. Some of the things we would like to see or we envision them seeing is being that effective, or having an effective community survey, adjusting it on a regular basis. We're not planning on letting this get stale. This is something we're looking at. We talk about it every meeting, once a month. Possibly begin a door knocking campaign with residents, businesses, just to talk about police services. Again, this is all up to them. Visit different organizations, as in several different service organizations and stuff, and discuss with them what they see in police services and what they see coming from us and what they want to see coming from us. And, bringing that information back to me, bringing that information back to you, and letting you know what's going on. And of course, the National Night Out in August, being present there and being available, and also being at the area, other various different festivals throughout the city and being accessible to the public. So as you can see, they're pretty well identifiable. They have a polo shirt as well as they have a very clear, distinct IDs to let everybody know who they are. So they're easily approachable and they're anxious to be involved. So that's what I have at this particular point. I would turn the table.
Well, we thank you for coming and bringing that update, and like any agenda item, we do open it up for the public. If there's anybody wishing to comment in reference to the Community Advisory Board, you can do so now. Okay. If not, we'll take comments or questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Heisen.
I have no questions. Great job. Thanks.
Councilmember Severance.
Just impressed with their dress, all the same, and nice job. Nice job to all of you. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Pagano.
I don't have any question, but I would like to compliment and thank all the members of the Community Advisory Board for your volunteer work and services to the community and the city, making yourself available to the public, providing them information and awareness of what the police department can provide to the public. Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo what Mr. Pagao said, but I also want to give you my personal thanks. It probably takes a lot of time and effort on your part away from families and other things you'd like to do. I really appreciate the effort that you put in. Thank you.
Councilmember Mons.
I'll just add my personal thanks too, and I'm sure for the citizens saying, boy, I'm glad somebody stood up and volunteered. So thank you for volunteering and eating cold dinners or being late home, but thank you. It means a lot, and lots of kudos, so thank you.
Councilmember Sevillas.
Thank you, Mayor. Also, thank you for your service, and especially those involved with the graffiti cleanup. I know there was kind of a rash in the southwest section of town that you folks got on fairly quickly. And I think it makes a big difference to get that stuff scrubbed up real quick. So thank you, one and all, for your work.
This past week, I saw a ranking, I think it was like Citywise, that did a ranking of the top safest cities in the state of Washington. We're ranked number 45th safest city in the state of Washington. I think we're a lot closer to one. And with your help and continued service, I think we're going to see our ranking continue to get closer to being the safest city in the state of Washington. So I want to thank you for all that you do. And if I'm correct, I think the pay for your volunteer hours is still zero. So for you to roll up your sleeves and do what you do on behalf of the citizens of Oak Harbor, you make us safer. So I appreciate that, and we look forward to next year's presentation. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have our Director of Development Services, Mr. Steve Powers, provide the Planning Commission 2013 annual report. So, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to brief you this evening on the 2013 Planning Commission Annual Report. Appropriate place to start is to remind the Council as well as our citizens who serves on our Planning Commission. Mr. Keith Fakema is our chair. Mr. Greg Wassinger is our vice chair. Greg is here this evening representing the Commission. Dave Fixie, Bruce Freeman, Christy Jensen, Sandy Peterson, and Anna Maria Schleck are your citizen planning volunteers. It occurred to me this afternoon as I was putting this together that perhaps not everybody knows what the Planning Commission does. What are their powers and duties? And so being a planner, what I did was I went to the code and cut a little piece out and put it on a slide for the council. Commission shall serve in an advisory capacity to the mayor and the council, and they have all of the powers and perform each and all of the duties specified in Chapter 35A 63 RCW, together with any other duties specified by city council or state law. So then I said, well, what the heck does that really mean? And what the Planning Commission really does for the council and the community is three really big important things. First of all, they help shape the vision for Oak Harbor. They do that through your Growth Management Act comprehensive plan. Mr. Kamak was just briefing you on the comp plan amendments that they will be working on this year. While we don't have any land use map amendments pending from a private side, we do have the public one. So that'll be something that they'll be tackling. They assist us with our utility master planning efforts, streets, water, sewer, storm drainage. And as the council will recall, they played a huge role in helping us with the Shoreline Master Program and getting that adopted in time to meet the state deadline. So the second main thing that they do then is to help create the regulations which implement that vision of the comprehensive plan. And those are your zoning and subdivision codes. And finally, they help you, the council, approve projects which are consistent with that vision. And primarily in that area, they deal with preliminary plat recommendations, of which I'm happy to announce that I think we will actually have a couple of preliminary plats this year, first time in at least a half a dozen years or more. So how do they do that? How do they assist the community and the council? Well, first of all, they carefully consider the information that's presented to them by the staff, by the applicants, and by the public. They enter into careful deliberations. And when doing so, they draw upon their backgrounds, their experiences, and their values. When I sit down with a new planning commission member, they often say to me that they don't know how to be a planning commissioner. I say, yes, you do, because what you bring to the table is your background, your experiences, and your values. We can teach you the rest of the sort of the planning things. Another really important thing that they do is they do the time. That might mean that they spend 2.5 hours on a single agenda item, going word by word, line by line in the proposed code, making sure the recommendation they put forth to you is the best that it can possibly be. And then finally, they make that recommendation to the City Council. So last year, they tackled the comprehensive plan amendments, most notably helping the staff identify the scope of amendments that we're going to need to complete by June 30th of 2016 in order to meet the state mandated update to our comprehensive plan. That was no small task, but it's small in comparison to the work that we'll be undertaking in the next 2 years. Secondly, they assisted us as they do on an annual basis with the 6-year transportation improvement program. That's our annual review of those streets projects that we think are, along with Public Works and Engineering, are worth investing the citizens' time and dollars in building those projects. Code amendments, we tackled a lot. We started the maritime zoning regulations, had to put that effort off to the side. We're going to pick that back up this coming year. Council will certainly recall that you adopted some new bed and breakfast regulations, making those a little bit easier to establish within our community. With the Planning Commission's help, you reworked your nightclub ordinance so that we have a set of regulations which are more responsive to community concerns and needs. We tackled the recreational marijuana in response to I-502, and due in no small part to the Commission's effort, we were able to meet your directive to stay inside of that 6-month timeline for that moratorium. And finally, they spent a lot of time working on the electronic message center sign code ordinance. That's coming back to the council after their last piece of work on it. I think we have that tentatively set for your April 18th meeting. They assisted Mr. Spoo in his economic development strategy. They were there to help as sort of a reviewing body. The majority of that work took place with the Economic Development Committee. The Planning Commission reviewed those actions and made a recommendation on that strategy to the council. And finally, amongst all of that other things, we did sneak them away for a little bit of training on comprehensive planning and the Growth Management Act. Looking forward to this year, we've already talked some about the 2014 amendments. The 2016 will be moving from our preparatory work that we did last year. Most of our efforts will be spent on the land capacity analysis. What that really is we'll be looking at our existing urban growth area coupled with our 20-year population projections, trying to figure out, do we have enough space inside of that boundary to put everybody, or do we need to talk about some changes in our land use pattern and or changes in our urban growth area boundary. Time permitting, we'll spend some time working with the county on countywide planning policies. Those are very important because they help all of the jurisdictions in Island County have a unified approach to looking at certain common problems. I've already mentioned the maritime zoning regulations. We've gotten the recreational marijuana rules behind us, but we need to tackle the medical marijuana rules. We're spending a lot of time this year on the capital facilities plan and the capital improvements plan. And as I mentioned earlier, the preliminary plat recommendations hopefully will be coming your way as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention who our planning staff is. Kathy Gifford is our administrative assistant. She's the one who helps make sure we get everything done the way we're supposed to get it done. The council is very familiar with Mr. Kamak and Mr. Spoo, their fine work as senior planners. And finally, then, in closing, staff thanks the Planning Commission for their dedication and hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. This time, we'll turn to the public. Anybody wishing to publicly comment regarding the Planning Commission 2013 Annual Report can do so now. Seeing none, we'll turn to the council for any questions or comments, starting with Councilmember Servatius.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Just want to thank even though they're not here except for Mr. Wassinger, thank you for your work. I know you've done that for many years. I know you're busy too, so I appreciate your time. It's valuable. Thank you.
Councilmember Munns.
No comment, thank you, Mr. Powers and your staff, but also thank the Planning Commission for volunteering their time eating cold dinners. And I know it's a lot of reading since I spent about 8 years on that board, so it's a lot of reading, but thank you very much.
Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank the committee and all the citizens that are involved in all of the stuff that we do around this town. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Pagal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You too, I would like to thank the Planning Commission for your volunteer work. I watch your proceedings on Channel 10. Your discussion and deliberations on every issue are quite extensive. So by the time you forward a recommendation to the council, it makes our job easier in the council. Thank you.
Councilmember Summers.
Thank you, Mayor. I would echo the thanks. Hopefully, you can pass that back to the members who are not here tonight. And as Mayor Pro Tem said, I feel more comfortable when I'm able to look at the work that they do and all the time that they spend, the questions that they ask. And I know that there are some issues that are quite emotional, and they get to deal with that before they get to the council, and oftentimes help that process. So thank you.
Councilmember Heisem.
Thank you, Mayor. Ditto to all of the above. And Mr. Wassinger, I trust that you will bring our thanks back to the rest of the commission. That is no small task, and we don't always get a chance to let you all know how much we appreciate you doing all of that legwork before it comes to us, but I know each and every one of us really do, so thank you.
And let me also echo that and say that I'm very, very pleased at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission seems well engaged, and they, in fact, truly take on the responsibility, and they seem to, roll up their sleeves and take on that role, and are making great. So, thank you for all that you do, and in fact, in your volunteer position, they don't even get shirts like the Community Advisory Board. We got to change that. But no, thank you very much. And looking at your docket or agenda for 2014, you're not done yet. So we look forward to what continues to come out of the Planning Commission. I know the City Council, when they take up an item, that's been before the Planning Commission, they're wanting to see what questions were raised. What's the Planning Commission recommending? So we sure appreciate you doing the grunt work, the leg work, and researching and asking the hard questions and coming up with a good recommendation for City Council. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Powers. Next up is professional services agreement with Perkins Coie LLP for the wastewater treatment plant. We'll turn to our city engineer, Mr. Joe Stoll. Mr. Stoll.
Mayor, council members, how's everybody doing tonight? Bet you're real excited to talk about the treatment plant again. It's like no short. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Keep the energy up. We got a couple more years to go. So on December 3rd, I came before council and asked for permission to go with GCCM as a delivery method. And so as we're digging into this, we're learning a lot, and we're finding that the contracts that we work with, that we're going to be working with, are very complex and unique. So what we're proposing is to bring in an outside counsel to help us streamline the process. We think there's a benefit in time and using some of his experience in doing these, many of these contracts. And we think that it can make a better project in the long run. So to get to that end, we met with 3 different firms that specialize in largely in doing this exact type of work. That's their bailiwick. We met with the 3 of them last Monday, the 10th, and I sat in interviews with them, with Nikki Esparza and also Pat Anderson of Grant Weed's office. And we, after interviewing him, we found that the one that really stood out was Perkins Coie. They'd clearly done this before. Not only did they understand the process quite well, they also understood, before we even had opportunity to ask, pending legislation that's currently sitting on the governor's desk that could change this process a bit. So we felt that bringing them in now they could help us draft these documents in a way that would benefit the city immensely in the long run. So the scope of services that we're asking them to help us with is to work on the request for qualifications. We already have a draft. Our other advisor, Dan Chandler, has a draft of that. Intend to have that vetted by the selection committee and also through Perkins Coie. Because it's important that we have a good foundation for where we're going with this project, and it all starts with the request for qualifications. If that's not written well and it doesn't address all of our concerns properly, it trickles down through the rest of the project. So we want to make sure we have that handled just right. The next thing that they would help with is actually drafting the contract documents that go out when we request proposals from the GCCM contractors. It's like I say, it's unique and it's tailored for each project. And Perkins Coie demonstrated that they know how to do that and they know the right questions to ask so that we can address and make sure that things like, for example, archaeology are considered when we contract with the GCCM. So we have that nailed right from the beginning. And then they're also going to help us review, we're doing a unique, it's unique for us, it's been done before, but the way we're purchasing the membranes and UV disinfection, we've had multiple arguments as to whether it's an equipment purchase or a public works project and how you contract it, how you transfer that equipment to another. It's not easy, and so we're looking for some help on that, and I think they're the right ones to help us with that. And then as later on, further, they'll help us with negotiation of the MAC, which is maximum allowable construction cost. That doesn't come until we're ready to start contract with them to actually build it. And then as we go through construction, they'll be available for questions and support as we're going through construction. And it's not all just legal, necessarily lawsuit type issues. It has to do with which line item do you pay out of, because the way GCCM is set up is that you could pay out of a risk contingency or the city's contingency, or does it supposed to be part of a special general conditions? It can be a challenge. There's a whole matrix of how to set that up. So with that, they've asked us for, they've given us an engagement letter with a not-to-exceed amount of $30,000. I spoke with them on the phone about that to make sure that that dollar amount made sense. I personally don't want to keep coming back and asking for more. So I wanted to make sure that nobody does. So I tried, and they assured me, of course, I wonder if it wasn't the attorney answer, but they assured me that if we exceeded that, it would be on our account, not theirs. So with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll. At this time, we'll turn to the public. Anybody wishing to public comment or address the council on this item can do so now. We'll ask you state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Shane Hoffmeyer, Oak Harbor, Washington. Just wanted to say real quick, I know you guys are probably a little gun shy when it comes to spending taxpayers' money. At 30,000, I think that was something near 1% of what you bring in. Anywho, I think it's an exceptionally great idea. You know, it's $30,000 that could potentially, eliminate a 10,000 or a $10 million cost overrun or something. So I think it would be money really well spent, and hopefully they're capable of doing it in a way that any and all cost overruns are the contractor's responsibility, hopefully, and I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffmeyer. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, we'll bring back our city engineer, Mr. Stoll, and turn to the city council, starting with Councilmember Eisen.
I have no questions.
Okay. Councilmember Severns.
Thank you, Mayor. I am familiar with this firm, been in the, at least in the Seattle area, where I've done some business. They've been exceptional. They're well-known. The question I guess I have is that $30,000 a part of our budget for this? I mean, we're not adding anything to what we're doing here. And potentially, as Mr. Hoffmeyer says, I suspect it could be a cost saver for us in the long run.
That's correct.
Okay, and it is in our budget?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Pagal.
Great job, Mr. Stoll. Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
Thank you. I have no questions. I'm going to vote yes.
Okay. Councilmember Munns.
Looks like a good selection. Keep it moving.
Councilmember Servatius.
Thank you. I too want to see this continue to move forward. I'm kind of curious. You put in the agenda bill, you believe it will save time and money. Can you give an example how that might save time and money? And the reason I ask is when I look at the hourly rates, and you divide that into 30,000, that's not that many hours. So they're going to have to be pretty on point to make that pan out.
Well, that's a very good point, and the reason why this works is because they've done a number of these contracts. The way it was expressed to me by our advisors, it's basically a menu. They have a selection of concerns, and they address those in the contract. They've done enough of them, and I don't know how. I'm sure everybody's familiar when you've written a document the 5th, 6th, 10th, 20th time. By the time you get kind of do it in your sleep, and even you just tweak it for the particular circumstance. And that's why we're hiring somebody with this kind of experience, is that they're able to do that, and that's how they're able to save time. And the money part of it follows because of that experience when it comes time to build the project, and if there's any kind of well, first off, it prevents a lot of conflicts that might happen during construction. And if there are any, we have somebody there to help support us through that was the drafter of the document.
Thank you. With that, I move to authorize the mayor to sign an engagement letter with Perkins Coie LLP on a time and materials basis not to exceed $30,000.
Second.
We got a motion from Councilmember Servatius, second by Councilmember Munns. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Stoll. I'll turn to our Assistant City Attorney, as well, Ms. Nikki Esparza, as well as our City Administrator, Dr. Court, and find out what staff anticipates being in executive session time-wise.
Our expectation is about an hour.
Okay, about an hour. Okay. Next up on our agenda is that executive session where City Council will be going into executive session to discuss pending litigation and potential litigation and property acquisition. And staff's anticipating that executive session to last an hour. And at this time, City Council's in executive session. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and reconvene this regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. This Tuesday, March 18th, when we last left you, City Council went into an executive session to discuss several issues, pending litigation and potential litigation, and property acquisition. In every executive session, no decisions, no actions are made, but action could be taken as we reconvene and at this time. In fact, as you see by our agenda, we possibly thought that property acquisition could take place, and that action could take place after executive session. I'll turn to council and see if council wishes to take any action. Councilman Owens.
Mayor, I would on the item of the property acquisition. I move that we authorize the mayor to sign closing documents, lease back to Woodby Island Bank, and other documents as needed to secure the purchase.
Okay,
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Munns, second by Councilman Campbell. Any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I'll point out that Councilman Severance has recused himself. That motion passes, and we'll move forward based upon that action and sign the closing documents, lease back to Woodby Island Bank, and the other documents to secure that purchase. So I appreciate the council, appreciate the staff and all their work in making. At this time, I'll turn to Councilman Risen and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
We'll
moved.
call back
Second.
Councilman Severance for adjournment.
No?
Do we need that?
I think he's already gone. But at this point, we have a motion to adjourn. Second, is there a second? We got a second. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.